Welcome to Sunrise Life, the podcast where we have conversations with traveling freelance models. Today, I have Jamie Lee Bauern on the line. Say hello.
Hello.
I'm so happy that you are here on the podcast with me.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and thanks for hiking with me the other day. That was fun too.
Oh, yeah, no, that was great. Thank you for having me.
So you live here in Phoenix.
Yes.
Cool. And how long have you lived here?
It's kind of all over the place because I am a native from Arizona. I was born in Phoenix, but I left at 9 and moved to California, and then I was back and forth from California and Arizona all the way until 16 or so. And then I was, in Arizona until I want to say 2019. I moved to Texas thinking it was going to be a year, but then COVID happened and turned it into 4 years. So I
Wow.
actually just got back to Arizona last year, so. But majority of it's been Arizona.
That's cool. How do you deal with the heat?
Um, well, I am a weirdo. I do enjoy the heat. I don't know, cold really hurts me. I can't stand the cold, so I prefer the heat. I'm like that weird person that's in the jacuzzi in the summertime. But my, I guess, strongest advice for Arizona, and especially people that are not used to this heat, is during, especially the hot seasons like July or June through August, I think, are the hottest times of the year. But anytime it starts to warm up, you just try to avoid going out during 3 to 5 p.m. Those are the hot points of the day. But it's always good to have an umbrella, and I love it because it is the dry heat. So you can just stand under the shade and be 5 or 10 degrees cooler, and where, places where it's humid, you can't escape it.
Right.
So, I'm in my apartment, and because if I'm not traveling, I'm working on a computer constantly answering messages. So I'm freezing in my apartment. I don't even know how hot it is outside.
It sounds nice. Cool. So for people listening and for me, because I'm curious too, I'd like to know how you got into modeling.
So it's kind of a little rabbit hole right there. So ever since I was really young, I've always wanted to, get into acting, but there's some things that kind of prevented me because I was in foster care for a bit, and the foster family were just really anti no acting, that's a selfish career kind of thing. And so I tried to pursue other things. I thought, oh, I'll go and become an auto mechanic, but I actually became a valedictorian, or was a valedictorian, and I got free scholarship for college. So I was like, well, I don't really want to go to a mechanic school if I got a free scholarship to go to college. So I was like, I don't know, what's something that involves math, because I love math, and then I'm an artist, so I love art, and then building and fixing things. So I was like, architect, I'll go for that. And when I was taking my 2 years of college, they needed me to take an elective, and I was like, oh, acting, I'm going to go into that. And when I started doing the acting classes, it just brought back that fire in me. I was like, oh, I really want to pursue acting. And after the 2 years, I needed to pay for college. And I was like, well, you know what? How about I just put this on the back burner, and, I can always come back to architect if I really wanted to. But, acting is kind of it's easier to start younger, and you have to kind of put your dues. So I was like, I'm just going to pursue that. And, I did a lot of little acting things like commercials, short films, and music videos and things like that, just little things here. There's not very often there's things out in Arizona, and that was why I wanted to move back to California. That just never happened. But anyways, one of my short films I was working on, there was this other actress, and we were giving each other contacts, and she said, oh, you should get into modeling. And I'm like, oh, I can't do that. I'm too short. And she's like, dude, look at me. I'm just the same height. You can do this. If I do it, you can do it. And I'm like, well, how do you do it? And she's like, oh, go to Model Mayhem and this and that. So I started a Model Mayhem account, and I didn't really understand it in the beginning. And I did a couple of trade shoots, and it was fun, but I was just like, I can't make money off of this. I don't really understand it. And I kind of just set it aside for a while. And then want to say a year later, this guy reached out to me, and he's all like, hey, I travel with a group of models, and I think, you fit the profile and, would like you to join us and this and that. And he happened to be in Arizona. And I mean, he did make it sound like it was a paid shoot. So I was like, okay, cool. When I got there, it wasn't a paid shoot, but he's like, oh no, this is a test run. But if you do well, then you can join the group and this and that. And I did, he was like a so called manager, like
Oh
not,
gosh.
yeah, you know that story. But, so I did see the red flags. However, I met the group of girls, which you would probably be familiar with, like Kat, um, Keen, and then Loro. They were part of that group, and then a bunch of
Yeah.
other. But anyways, yeah, I was like, okay, well, I'm traveling with a group of girls. I feel a little safe, and I know he's a part of it. But again, I had no idea how to make money off of this, and I've never really truly traveled. And, you know, at this point, Arizona and California were the only two places I've ever gone. And I was like, what? I really wanted to try to, pursue this, and I can learn what I can, and then I'll leave, the manager when it's safe and ready, and I know everything that I need to know. But after I was shooting with him, he's like, yeah, I think you'd be a great fit and this and that. And at the time I was with this boyfriend, and we were together, I want to say 3 years at this point. And he knew that even before we got together, that was like, I told him, I was like, I want to get into acting. So if I know that's a tough career, to especially have with a relationship, and if you can't hang, he's like, no, 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 I understand. But I don't think he really understood. And so I told him, I was like, yeah, I want to join this group and travel with them. And it didn't end well. We were just fighting for like all night long until it was like, I want to say 3 in the morning. And I was working at a bagel shop called Einstein's, and I needed to get to work to take
Oh.
a really important delivery, because there were some issues that like the delivery wasn't correctly delivered a couple times. Not always from us. It was more like, because the people that take the order, like they, messed it up the first time, and then the second time, I guess we messed it up, and then the third time, I don't know. There was a lot of, so we were like, this is our Hail Mary, like we got to get this in. And so like I, was sleep deprived. I didn't have any sleep on top of, stressed out, fighting with my boyfriend. And, and then I went to work, and they're like, oh, you need to leave now. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, they asked us to take it early, so you need to leave now. And I'm like, okay. So like I'm rushing the delivery out, and I don't know what happened. I think my tire blew. It was my boyfriend's truck. And
Oh my god.
yeah, so the traffic started, like my because the truck is top heavy, it started tipping, and I corrected it, but because I like kind of swerved and corrected my truck from tipping, it ended up going into oncoming traffic on the freeway, and I just didn't want to hit anyone. So I don't know why. It was just like, when you're in like a life death situation, everything kind of goes slow-mo or something. But I
Yeah.
saw a speed sign because I knew I was going too fast to like really hit the brakes and be able to stop in time. I decided to hit the speed sign. And when I did, I flipped my truck 3 times. But again, it's funny because, I hear this story all the time that drunk drivers, the reasons they usually survive is because they go limp. So I kind of knew that. So I was like, okay, when this happens, I'm just going to go limp. And I did. I just kind of let it all happen. And I just waited for a little bit. And I'm like, okay, is it done flipping? Cool. And then I like crawled out of my truck and stuff. But
Oh
long
my
story short, because, I felt fine, and I was trying to get the delivery. I was trying to call my boss, but I couldn't find my phone. And this person comes up to me, and they're like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I just need my phone. They're like, no, you need to sit down. I'm like, no, I need my phone. And they're like, no, like, sit down. And I'm like, please, if you're not going to call my phone, then leave me alone. And
oh, gee.
I was just like, I'm a workaholic, and I like, to get things done right. And, yeah,
Oh,
I know I'm a little crazy. But anyways, I find my phone. I tell my boss, like, hey, like, I can't take the delivery. I got into a car accident. Please send somebody else, kind of thing. And then, and then I told my boyfriend, and then the ambulance came. They said my vitals were fine. And they told me, you should go to the hospital or go home. And I'm like, well, if I can go home, then I'm just going to go back to work. So I had the police officer take me back to work. But after like an hour or two, I started feeling really bad. And it's a whole long story, but I'm just going to cut to the chase. I ended up being in the hospital. Apparently, um, I had internal bleeding and lacerations on my liver and kidney. And yeah, so I wasn't doing well. And the hospital, they messed up too. They like overdosed me with morphine. So they killed me a couple times. And
Oh my God.
it was a whole thing, but not to get into too much detail, but I ended up being in the hospital for 4 days. And the only reason that I got out earlier than 4 days is because, again, it almost killed me several times. And I was like, you know what? I just want to go home, because they also were trying to pretend that the morphine overdose was me having a bad reaction. And it's like, no, you overdosed me. The doctor even said you overdosed me. It's not that I had a bad reaction to it. And so because of that, like, they refused to give me any pain medicine.
Oh
And yeah, there was just a lot of things. And
my
like
God.
in that 4 days, they never once washed off like, I only had one cut on my foot, which is weird because I had a full covered like tennis shoe. So it's just interesting that out of my whole body that got a cut was like in a spot that was fully covered. And so like externally, I was perfectly fine. Internally, not so much. But again, they were just not good with me, and they didn't clean me, and it was just a whole thing. And so I finally demanded to leave. But in that time, my boyfriend never really came to see me. Like, it was this whole thing, and my family didn't really come and see me. It was just a lot of personal stuff. But basically, in that 4 days, and realizing that I've given my whole life to my family and my boyfriend, and I was like, okay, you know what? No one's here for me, and I need to live for myself. So I'm going to take this modeling option and opportunity. And once I got out of the hospital, I told my boyfriend, I was like, look, I'm taking this opportunity, and if you don't like it, there's the door, kind of thing. And so yeah, I took it. I told the manager guy that I was like, hey, I just got into an accident, but I can start in like a month, kind of thing. And he's like, oh, okay. And then I did, and that's what I've been doing ever since. So long story short, I guess a car accident made me decide, yeah, this is what I want to do.
Wow. That is an amazing story. That is, I mean, making the leap from having a regular job and like pursuing your college career and like dealing with, I guess, friends and family and stuff like that, going from that to moving into full-time freelance modeling, that's like a huge shift. But it seems like this like life endangering experience that you had kind of like sparked that like desire, or that like knowing that you were like, you know what, that's so crazy. Like, your family and your boyfriend, they weren't there for you, and you were living to appease them. But like, why would you be living to appease them and if you're not happy? Wow, that's so crazy.
Yeah, I feel like, when you know that you should do something, or you really want to do something, but you don't know how to take that leap or go for it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I truly believe that sometimes the universe will shake up your whole world to make that happen. And
Wow.
I think that's what happened. Is I kept, convincing myself that, no, this is good or whatever. And the universe is like, nope, this is your chance, and you're not going to see it until we smack you. So I was like, okay, I see it. I get it.
So
But
did
yeah.
you ever get back to Einstein bagels again?
Yeah, so I was the baker, and the only reason I took the deliveries because I kind of was doing everything, and he really wanted me to be like an assistant manager, but I was like, no, I don't want that responsibility. But I was hired as the baker, and I was really only the baker, but I did everything else. And I told him, because that was another thing the manager did tell me. He's like, how we work is, because we have a group of models, is that you're on for a month and you're off for a month, which ended up being a lie. But so I told my boss, like, hey, and that was another thing that also made me decide my decision, because Einstein's company, not my like boss or anything, but the company itself really screwed me over, because the doctor told me, well, the first doctor was kind of really rude and was like, yeah, you can go back like the next day. And it's like, I don't think so. And then I got a second opinion from a different doctor, and they're like, no, you need at least a month or two off. Like, I'm gonna insist that you take 2 months off, because like those are lacerating liver, like, your lacerations, they need to heal. and
Okay.
you can't do any heavy lifting and this and that. And plus, I was a little shaken up from driving, so I was like, I really don't want to drive right now. But they took the advice from the first doctor. And so because of that, they only gave me like 3 days off after I got out of the hospital. And I
Oh,
didn't know this. And so I was off for 2 months. And I think what they did was they like only pay for a week of my absence, even though I was out for 2 months. And even with that weeks, they only give you 60% of what you normally would make. So I had only $150 to my name from those 2 months that I was off. And so it was just like my company screwing me over too. It was just a lot of like everyone around me. I was like, okay, screw you all too. Like, sorry, I don't know who else said that. But anyways, yeah, my boss really, really liked me. And he's like, yeah, you know what? Like, I'm fine with you, being gone for a month and coming back and this and that. But after my first tour, again, that's a whole nother story with that manager and all that. That's all like people tell me I need to write my story. But anyways, he's like, I get home and I'm only home for 3 days, and he's like, oh yeah, like I set up that you're gonna leave a few days earlier than the group of models. You're gonna meet up with us later. I'm gonna have you fly out to South Dakota, and this guy's gonna pick you up and drive you to North Dakota, and you're gonna stay with him for 3 days in the shoot in the middle of nowhere in this in yeah, and then you're gonna meet us in Florida. I'm like, wait, first off, thought we traveled as a group together, and second of all, I've only been home for 3 days. Like, what do you mean? Because he wanted me to leave in the next 3 days. So I'd only been home for 6 days. And then he's all telling me, because I was like, I'm supposed to have a month off. I would have to work and things like that. And he's like, no, I never told you that. And I'm like, okay, you gaslighting me right now. But so I told my boss my situation. I was like, hey, I'm really sorry. I thought it was going to be a month on, a month off, but apparently that's not the case. And he's like, you know what? Like, no matter, like, I don't want you to put in your 2 weeks. So whenever you're home, just let me know and we'll schedule you in. And so that's what I did for, I want to say like 2 or 3 years. I would model for like pretty much like the whole year. And then like during November through January, those are the months I would take off because I've learned really quick that traveling during that time, like everywhere is cold, everyone's traveling, and also tight on cash because of the holidays. So I'm like, I'm just gonna be home for those times, and I would just work at Einstein's. And so yeah, so I was always working one way or another, and like but yeah, so I continued working with Einstein's for a good while.
and do you still work with a manager for your modeling bookings?
No, no, no. I quit that pretty well, I want to say pretty quick, but it was maybe about a year, year and a half. Again, I was really just trying to learn everything I needed to learn and feel comfortable to go on my own. I also, because he told us and made us write this contract, he even made us pay $500 to
Yeah.
join this agency. Yeah, again, I saw the red flags, but I was like, sometimes you just have to bite the bullet and just to, because even though there was a lot of bad things and he was not a good person and was just, a lot of shit, but it was still worth it in the end because I did learn what I should and shouldn't do on top of how to go forward in my, traveling and all this stuff. So, I did learn from it. So I still think it was worth the money and the trauma or whatever you want to call it.
Oh my
Y-
gosh.
Yeah, he also put in a contract that he was in charge of all of our social medias. So he pretend to be us on everything. And all of us were really upset with him about that. We are like, just let him know that you're our manager. Don't pretend to be us. And he just insisted that that wasn't the right way to go because people don't want to hire people with managers. And I didn't understand that in the beginning, but now I realize, oh, it's because of people like you. But yeah, and so it was really frustrating when we had photo shoots and then he would have like these inside jokes and conversations. And so we'd have to pretend to know what they're talking about. And sometimes they would get so confusing too that like, he didn't give us the right instructions or things like that, or there was miscommunication. And so we'd have to finally tell the photographer like, hey, I'm sorry, but you're really talking to our manager, not us. And of course, they were upset about it. But it's like,
Uh-huh.
there's only so much we can pretend. And yeah, so that didn't always end well. But I also was never, it's funny because photographers, when they'd meet me, they'd be like, "Oh, wow, you're a lot nicer than I thought you were." And I'm like, "What? Like, what do you mean?" Like, I'm like, "What are you telling these photographers?" And I still run into some issues with some photographers I've recently, like, shot with. They'll be like, "Oh, yeah, I wanted to shoot with you years ago, but you, like, blew me off, or you turned me down, or this and that." And I'm like, "I'm sorry, but that was not me. Like, that was years ago. You're talking to my manager." And so, I'm still trying to recover from that. And I'm pretty sure that, because again, I think he's a narcissist and sociopath, actually, but I still think he's messing with my account and reporting things and has a fake account of mine. And I know that I was just with Lo yesterday helping her change a tire, and she is telling me how he's still messing with her and posting some of her unflattering photos on porn sites and using her
What?
real name and stuff. Yeah, he's does a lot of awful things. And
What the hell?
yeah, like he tried to force all of us into porn and all sorts of stuff. Like he was an alcoholic and all sorts of stuff. He's not a good person.
Oh my god, I'm sorry that you got roped into that. And I guess it's kind of like a warning to other aspiring models that might be listening to this podcast. If
Yeah.
somebody messages you and they say that they can help you make a bunch of money and like become a star or whatever, go
Mhm.
the other way. Like find other models and ask them questions. I
Yeah.
think that there's a lot more support in the modeling community than what you can get working with some guy who wants to screw
Yep.
you over and take a percentage of your income and stuff.
Yeah, and that was the worst thing about that whole percentage thing was after a point, he wanted me to schedule my own shoots, but still pay him a percentage. And I'm like, no, if I'm booking my own shoots, why would I pay you anything? And he's like, well, because I'm part of that connection and you're traveling with us. And he also didn't want to, like, he traveled with us. So he wanted us to pay for his, like, flight tickets or plane ticket or bus tickets, and then also his hotel. And I'm like, no, like if you're traveling with us, you're paying for your own, transportation on top of if you're sharing a hotel with us, you're paying in. And like, I don't know if the other models like put their foot down, but I was like, no, like I'm not carrying you. You have to pay your own way. And but that
Damn.
was I was always so frustrating too, because like I always had to kind of sleep in between. Like he'd sleep on the couch, and I'd like be the one closer to him because Lo, she couldn't stand his snoring, and so all night she would be like tossing, turning, and screaming, and throwing pillows at him and stuff, and like it was just like she couldn't sleep, so she had to make sure none of us could sleep because Andrew, I guess it doesn't matter. Everybody should know to stay away from Andrew Jackson. He's the manager
Uh-huh,
of
I'm
pretending.
telling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stay away
That
from him.
yes.
He messages you. Stay away. That's good feedback, especially if he's still continuing to try and screw with you guys.
Yeah. And
Dang.
he has like, because I was smart, because that was the thing too about the social media, as he said that if we ever left on bad terms, he would change all of our passwords and not allow us to have access to anything, and that he would ruin our career. And he did that to Lo a couple of times, and then of course she would come back because she didn't have access to anything. And so I, again, I try really hard to learn from others. I try not too often to learn the hard way, but sometimes that still happens. But so when I went on one of my last trips before I left him, I made sure to change all the passwords that were sent to the email first for notification, because there's some that I know he'll get a text message. So I did all the email stuff first, and then I did the ones that would send him a text message, and I made sure I did it as fast as I could, and I made sure he was blocked out of all my social medias, that way he couldn't screw me over. And
Wow.
yeah, and I just said, "Here's the last of your money. I'm done." And that was, I didn't respond after that because there's just some people, there's no logic, there's no, you're reasoning with them, because I
Yeah.
know, like, Lo would always try to reason with him, and I'm like, "No, like, he's a sociopath, you can't." There's some people you just can't, so I just
You.
yeah.
Dang, yeah, screw that. I'm glad you're free of that and you're totally in control of your own career and your photo
Like
shoots
more.
and the communication and your social media, and I bet that feels good.
Okay.
Wow, that's crazy.
I want to take a short little break to tell you about Model Society. ModelSociety.com is a website dedicated to featuring figurative fine art photography for models and photographers. What makes them different than other portfolio hosting websites is that some of those other websites will still host kind of tacky photography or exploitative photos. Model Society screens all of their contributors for quality and authenticity. So you only get the best of the best on there. If you're not a photographer or model, you can still enjoy and appreciate Model Society because they also have newsletters and magazines featuring their best work and new articles each week. Check it out, modelsociety.com. I will also include a link to Model Society in the show notes. All right, now back to our show.
So I have this bit on my podcast that I like to call the photo shoot fail of the week. It's an opportunity for you to tell a crazy story of something that happened during your modeling. It can be crazy good, crazy bad, crazy funny, crazy scary. If you've got more than one story, feel free to tell more, but what's one of your crazy photo shoot stories?
There's so many, but it just sounds like when you say photo fails, I'm like, oh, so this gotta be like a failed attempt. I mean, because obviously there's been, like, when I was with the manager, he scheduled some really sketchy shoots, and that was the whole point of him, was to vet people, and obviously he didn't. So there's obviously some horror stories from those, but I guess to lean towards the good, and like one of the times I went back to work with Einstein's, this is how I met my boyfriend I'm with right now. We've been together for 6 years now. And
Congrats.
yeah, thank you. But anyways, he happened to be a new worker at Einstein's, and we just immediately, hit it off. And long story short, I ended up having him travel with me, and we did photo shoots together and stuff like that. And I really enjoyed like lyra and aerial stilts and trapeze, and we would also do it like after yoga. So my boyfriend and I would do stuff like that. And I guess, like, to go into that theme, photo shoot fail or photo fail, my boyfriend and I were doing this lyra shoot, and we're trying to replicate this picture where the guy's sitting on the lyra, and then the model, or the female, is upside down holding onto the knees and like leaning one of her legs onto the top of the lyra,
Huh?
and then her other leg is like leaning straight back. And and they did have like a rope or a chain around her, and the guy was holding the chain, which I'm so glad. I was like, this seems like something I need to incorporate. So we tied some rope around my stomach, and my boyfriend was holding it. And I'm so glad that we had that, because again, this is, it's pretty high up the ground, and the floor is concrete.
Huh.
And my boyfriend was wearing like I don't know, like, I want to say these like brief boxers or something silky. And so when I was holding onto his knees, the boxers or whatever pants that he was wearing, they were so slippery that my hand slipped off, and I went towards the ground. But luckily my boyfriend was strong enough, and he like held me up and
Whoa.
like was able to slowly like lower me down. And I was just like, oh, that would have been face first. That would not have been pretty.
Oh my god, that sounds scary.
But yeah, I think that was like the worst in that sense. Most of our, like, acro yoga or trapeze and stuff like that they weren't, they're usually went well.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this really counts, but I think this was like crazy in a fun way. Last year, I went with one of my model friends and her boyfriend, who's a photographer, and we went to Bora Bora and Tahiti. And,
Nice.
we're doing fun shoots around there and stuff like that. And like, I am terrified of sharks and the ocean and alligators. Those are like my three fears. Like it's like irrational though. Like if I see it like on the TV or a picture, I don't know. It's so silly, but I do. I just like, especially if it's a jump, surprise. I scream. It's so bad.
Uh-huh.
And so I was like, I'm gonna conquer my fear. So I got to swim with sharks and stuff, and we got photos and videos of that. And so it wasn't like when we were swimming with the sharks, we didn't do like a real photo shoot, but we still got photos and videos, and we did do real photo shoots, just not of the sharks. But I
Yeah.
like to say that kind of counts.
Yeah. No, that's cool. I mean, I've been to Tahiti. I haven't been to Bora.
Okay.
But I've been to, oh my gosh, there's a little island called Moorea where they have a
Okay.
lot of like stingrays and stuff.
Oh yeah, we did get to swim with the stingrays as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what was cool about this trip is it was a little different because I think what we did was we flew into Tahiti. We were on this boat with this family that like is basically like an Airbnb on a boat, and the family would sell us through all the islands to eventually get to Bora Bora.
Cool.
And they hosted us, they fed us, and they like took us to all these touristy things. Like we got to go to this really amazing like private owned farm, and it's like like just family owned. And again, just these things that you wouldn't really get to do unless you had like real connections to do it. So that was really cool to see this private owned farm. And then there's like this vanilla bean farm, and then we also went to this pearl farm, like a lot of farms. But it was really cool to hear their stories and learn their way of living and stuff like that. And it's amazing because everyone just seems so genuinely happy there. It was really cool. And but yeah, then he would also take us to go snorkeling, and we went to a lot of beautiful places to snorkel. And but the first day we arrived on the boat, we saw these giant whales jumping out of the water, and there's two of them. I think it was mating season or something. But like the people on the boat, the family, they were all freaking out. Oh my god! And it's so close and this and that. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this is not like something that happens every day. And so we got really lucky to see these whales jumping out of the water for our first day. And then the second day, we had a group of dolphins swimming with the boat. And like, it's so close that we could literally touch them and stuff. And they were also like really excited about that. And I'm like, oh, we're getting really spoiled right now. Like, we're getting to see all the stuff that most people don't, I guess, see on a regular. And then the third day, we're feeding these sharks, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, tomorrow we're swimming with them." And I'm like, "Wait, really?" I'm like, "Okay, let's do this." But the first day we went snorkeling, it was actually kind of traumatizing because it was like over these corals that it's like really close, like the water was not really, deep, and so you had to kind of keep yourself really flat and try to like not kick your feet or arms too much because you don't want to get cut by the coral. And I
Mhm.
don't think that was a good start for me because again, like, I'm also trying to conquer like my fear of the ocean and sharks and stuff. But it didn't help that my goggles and the snorkel, it was broken, the snorkel part. So like I kept getting water in my mouth, so I can't like breathe. And when you can't breathe and you're sucking in water, you kind of end up kind of freaking out and flattling, and
Yeah.
but you can't really move around because you're gonna get cut up, and it's like, oh. And
I'm
then my
so
goggles aren't tight enough, so the water kept getting in, so I can't see. And the flippers, I have small feet, and the flippers kept slipping off. It was just everything that could go wrong was, and it was like during a cold. It was like it wasn't. I'm trying to think of what time of the year it was. I think it was August, I want, if I remember correctly, but it's like apparently like winter time for them. And
Mhm.
it's still beautiful and still doable, but it was definitely cold, and like I saw him like shivering and shaking, and like I'm freaking out. Luckily, the guy, he like comes and he switches the goggles and snorkel with me, and then he just ended up taking my hand and like just kind of swimming around. And I think that was the only thing that was going to work the first time around because, again, I just didn't have the proper equipment working for me. And so I was a little worried the second time because we're going to be swimming with sharks now. And I was like, I don't know if it's going to work. But the second time was great because all the stuff we tested ahead of time and they all
Man,
fit and worked. So it was a blast after that.
that's great. Do you know what kind of sharks they were?
Yeah, so the first ones, they weren't very big. They're about my size or, roughly or like, like human size. They were like black tip sharks, I believe.
Uh-huh.
And so, there's like an area where you're technically not supposed to feed sharks, but, obviously nobody listens. So now there's always a group of sharks that meet at a certain time of the day.
Okay.
And there's just like a group of people that are there, and there's all these other fish and stingrays as well. And it's just seeing all of them coincide is actually really cool. But we also found an octopus that was interesting. One of the guys like pulled him out and everyone's checking him out. I kind of felt bad for the octopus because he's just like, dude, why are you molesting me right now? But my friend went to touch it and like it shot ink at him, and then they let him go. So I was like, yeah, you get away. But the later we ended up our last day, I think. Well, last day to do stuff, or maybe it was the last day. We were doing some other touristy stuff, and we were on like jet skis and stuff, and there's a spot where we stopped to eat, and there were lemon sharks. And this is
Whatever.
the first time I ever heard of lemon sharks, and they're called lemon sharks because they're yellow. And in the water they don't look that yellow, but then when I saw the fin come out, it was like super yellow, and yellow is like my favorite color. So I'm like, I was just like instantly fascinated, and like I was like checking them out, and the tourist guide was all like, "Oh, do you want to jump in?" And I'm like, "Is it safe?" And he's like, and he jumps in, and I'm like, okay. So I jump in, and I'm being ballsy now, and like I'm taking all these videos of these lemon sharks, and they're much bigger, not too big, but and the thing that kind of helped me with the other sharks is that they told me the rule of fish is little fish don't eat bigger fish, and if you're the same size, then they don't eat you, or they don't bother with you, they don't see you as food. And I know humans aren't really, sharks' food anyways, but, these ones were a lot bigger. They were really cool, but they just started getting way too close. And because I had the goggles and my phone had its case on to, waterproof it, I can't really see as I'm recording and I'm trying to see it. So sometimes I would look up and the shark would be right in my face, and I would like slowly try to back up without trying to freak out, because I know animals can sense fear and stuff, so I tried so hard not to like, give that off. But I'm just like, okay, a little too close. But yeah, after a point, I was like, okay, I feel like I'm testing fate. I need to get out now. But it was really cool.
That does sound really cool, though, especially because of
Right.
how much fear you had about sharks in the ocean before that
Uh-huh.
trip, where you went out there to like take photos and like experience the nature and all that. I
Right.
feel like sometimes like modeling helps, freelance models like us overcome fears like that, because you have the desire to like create, or I don't know, there's something about it that gives you a courage, because you have like something that you're doing alongside of just facing your fears. You're just like
Right.
inspired, I guess.
Yeah, no, and I really do agree with that, because I also, like, before I was modeling and doing all this, I had really bad anxiety and all sorts of other stuff, and talking to people and like I'm kind of an introvert. I'm definitely an introvert, but I'm also kind of an extrovert as well. And it's kind of a weird combination. But I do really have bad anxiety talking to people and getting out of my bubble. And I know a lot of people probably don't know this or realize this, even in like school and stuff. Like, because I can fake it and really socialize if I need to, but it takes a lot of energy for me, and I have to go home and recharge for sure. But so doing that in the beginning, that was really nerve wracking, and I would like get so stressed out before a photo shoot, because I'm like, I don't know what to say, I don't know what to do. Like, I'm gonna be with this person I've never met, and this and that, and but once you do it so often, it becomes second nature, and I also think that it really helped me overcome that anxiety, because my whole family has this really bad anxiety of being around people and crowds and talking to new people, but it's definitely taken me out of that bubble and allows me to I don't know, it definitely freed me from that. And I'm not saying that I don't sometimes still have that anxiety, especially with big crowds, but it's not as bad or as paralyzing as it used to be.
Yeah, I actually feel the same way a lot of the time. Like when I'm in a modeling or creative type situation, I feel more extroverted. But when I'm
Mhm.
in a different type of social situation, if there's more than four people hanging out and it's not like a very familiar situation for me, then I usually just get really quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I have another question that I also ask everybody on the show. I call it the rising phoenix era of your life. Can
Good.
you describe a situation where you were faced with some kind of a challenge that you had to overcome? It could be related to your modeling or anything, really.
Hmm. I mean, there's so much again that comes to mind, but I guess something recent that really I guess I kind of overcome is obviously I've dealt with a lot of like, childhood trauma and then, also like just other traumas, but with that, like and I'm not like a person that doesn't have like confidence. I do, but like I never had self-love. That sounds so terrible. But because you hear it, you're like, oh, you can't love others until you can love yourself, and you hear these things, and it's like, yeah, I get it, but there's just that moment where it finally clicks and it falls in place. And again, like I've never been like insecure. Really, it's not like looks or whatever. Like I was never really focused on that, but I do feel like when you're modeling and you see yourself in your images every day and you kind of like that's your career and you start to hyper focus on your looks and this and that and you start, at least for me, I started being more self-conscious and insecure and worried and I didn't like that because again, like when I started modeling, I didn't really have that because I didn't really focus on looks, but when you're in that career you do. And so it was just causing some, a lot of anxiety and depression and just a lot of issues with myself. But I don't know what happened, but this tour recently, it just all kind of clicked, and I actually I never thought I would be able to look in the mirror and say I love myself. It sounds such a cliche, but I do feel good now, and I actually think I found self-love, and I'm like, oh, is what they were talking about? Like, I don't know, but yeah, and so I guess that's kind of one of the biggest challenges of my life is because again, I've dealt with a lot of, things from my past and stuff that, made me feel maybe, like worthless or inadequate, or I just was never good enough. And like, I'm always like the person that comes to the rescue for my family. And, I know I have all this love for them, but I know that, it doesn't reciprocate. And then I'm fine with that kind of thing. Like, it doesn't need to be a two-way street. Only with family. Like, I always tell people, like, when it comes to my personal relationship, like a boyfriend or something, like, I I'm in too much of a toxic relationship with my family that I can't have a toxic relationship as a partner. So I do find good partners, but yeah, but now my family, I think I've kind of tried really hard because I know that I learned like words mean nothing to me kind of thing. It's like actions speak louder than words. And so that's kind of what I try to do with my family, especially my younger siblings and stuff, is just constantly show them that I'm there for them, no matter what they say or do to me, like I'll love you and I'll continue loving you. And hopefully they would get that it's not just words. It's not just like, oh yeah, well, this person told me they loved me, but then they abandoned me kind of thing. And so I think now everybody in my family is starting to understand and they're starting to actually, I don't want to say appreciate me, but like, they're starting to, come around and realize that I'm not just feeding them words and they, I've lived by example as well. And so that's helped a lot. And I think between, my family starting to realize I do actually care about them and then also just realizing I care about myself too. that, because I was like one of those people like, yeah, I know you can't love others until you love yourself, but I'm different. I can love others without loving myself, and like that whole like, oh, look at yourself as a little girl, but you treat her. I'm like, I wouldn't even touch
Yeah.
that. But now I'm like, no, yeah, I can actually confidently say without feeling like I'm gonna like, vomit in my mouth. Like, yeah, I love myself.
I mean,
I
that's a really great place to be, though. I mean, congratulations, because it takes a lot of people. I mean, some people never reach that, you know?
Right, and that's yeah, and I genuinely thought I was one of those people that would never reach that, but I don't know.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your relationship with people in your family is like a really big part of your life and it's really important to you.
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I have 8 siblings. My mom had 9 kids, and,
Wow.
nothing against my mom. I really do love her, and she is a good person. It's just, everybody has their faults and their demons, and she also had a rough upbringing and stuff, and I fully understood this, and, there's a lot to it, and, I'm not trying to make anyone look like the bad guy, but I did have to step up a lot and take care of my siblings and be like the second parent. There was a point where she disappeared entirely, and I dropped out of 7th grade to take care of my 2 younger sisters at the time. And that's not like maybe, I want to say, 4 or 5 months into it, we ended up all going into foster care and stuff. And I was away from my family for almost 4 years. And I knew after I dropped out in the 7th grade that because most of my family, they haven't graduated high school. Like most of them drop out in like the 6th grade and stuff. And my older sister, she did graduate high school, and I'm the second. And I'm hoping my last sister, who is 16, will graduate. We're all trying to encourage her, but yeah, like when I was like 12, I was just like, no, I need to really be different. Education is everything, knowledge is power. So when went back, when I was in foster care, back to school, I was like, I'm going to get straight A's. I'm going to work my ass off. I'm not going to day. And I'm not like, I know my family has terrible taste in people. So I'm just not even going to waste my time with that. And so, I really focused on that, but it was kind of a challenge because the family I was living with, that was another terrible toxic situation. And sorry, I hit the mic. But anyways, they weren't very good either. But after they kicked me out, I went to go back to my real family, but that didn't go well. And so I ended up just going on my own around 16 or so, and just
Wow.
and because I went to so many different schools, because I moved a lot, just in general, but in just high school alone, I went to 5 different high schools, and I moved so much that even though I had straight A's, I had to go to a continuation school because they're like, you're just too far behind. Because when I did move back to my family, I was like, I just finished sophomore year and I was going into my junior year, but I was like I was homeless, living with my mom on the streets, and I just couldn't get into school. So I missed my whole junior year and stuff like that. And I just bouncing around a lot. And so finally I found this continuation school, and they told me that, they can get me in, but it took so long to get all my paperwork accumulated from all these different schools that I finally had to, because I was like, I think it was like 3 months after school started, I kept bugging them, like, well, you need your paperwork. And finally, I just contacted all the schools and got the paperwork myself, took it to them, and I was like, I need to get into school. I need to finish this. And so finally, I was able to go, and I took day classes and night classes. I also, I just because I didn't get to experience everything that most people experience in high schools, I think is like, I didn't have a prom, or they didn't have a yearbook, and a few other things. So I actually created those things. Well, yeah, like, well, it's funny. I didn't like plan on it. Like, there's just people would come to me like, hey, I would really want to make the yearbook, and we're gonna join a committee. Do you want to be a part of it? And I'm like, sure. And then somehow I'm the president of it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so and then people don't realize making the first yearbook for a school, like, there's a lot to it. Like, we had to create like not just holidays, but things to do at the school. So we had things to put in the yearbook. Like, we had messy hair day or like, sport wear day or, just all these things. And then we also had to create their first picture day. And again, this is a continuation school. It's for people that are like gangsters or in prison or drug addicts or, pregnant women, they're still kids, but, they're feisty, and trying to get a gangster to take off his hat or bandana during picture day because the principal is like, you need to do that, and if they don't, then you can suspend them or expel them. Or I'm like, that's not gonna mean anything to them, and I'm like, could we just take a picture with, like, does it really matter? But yeah, so that was really stressful, on top of, like, of course, I'm like the stray student, and on top of forcing all these people to take pictures and do all these holidays, and they're just like, I do think that they started to like hate me at the end of it. I'm like, oh god. But yeah, it was cool. And the way we made it work was that we made it a digital yearbook, so it was on a disc. It wasn't like a normal paper book, in which that was kind of like the first of its at the time. That was like something that wasn't heard of yet. And then, I got wrinkled into the whole like prom, like, oh, like, I really want to make a prom. Do you want to join this committee? I'm like, sure. And then again, I was forced to be the prom committee president. It's like, I just was joining. I thought I was going to help. I didn't think I had to lead this stuff. But, I had to, like, I would go, like, on our days off, I would go around asking people to donate, like, grocery stores and stuff. And, just a lot of, getting donations on top of decorating everything, and just all the planning and all that stuff. But again, it was great because, I got to do that. But then also, because I didn't get to do any sports, I joined all the sports. I was in the basketball team, I was in the soccer team, I was in the dance committee, and then I also, I don't know,
Wow.
I was doing a lot of stuff. I overdid it, but it's my senior year. I want to do it all, kind of thing. That's why I was taking day and night classes. But also, just to graduate in time, I asked this one teacher, because he comes in an hour early for school every day. And I was like, hey, if I get approval by the principal to make my own class with you in the morning, the hour before we start, would you be okay with that? And he's like, yeah, if you get him to approve it, I don't mind. So I got the, principal to write off on it. So I was taking a special class at at 4 a.m. before anybody else. And so, I was working my ass off to make sure I got everything and I graduated on time. But it was funny because I didn't even know until it happened what valedictorian was. I was like with the council, and they're like preparing me for graduation. Like, oh, by the way, you're valedictorian. I'm like, oh, cool, cool. So I'm like, so what is that? And they're like, oh, that's when you get in front of everybody and give a speech. I'm like, oh, no, everyone's gonna throw paper at me. But it didn't. It was good. But that was, again, my life is like a series of obstacles. Anything that should be easy there's always hurdles. So like even the graduation, trying to get my speech, that was the whole thing. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I keep hitting the mic with my hand because I talk with my hands.
No
But
worries.
anyways, yeah. Sorry, going on rants.
No, I think that's a really amazing story. Thank you for telling it all. And over the course of this whole like interview, I've noticed that like you have been in positions where like other people were like trying to not keep you down, but like your ex-boyfriend before you got in your auto accident, like didn't want you, like you guys got in a fight about you moving into modeling and acting, and your foster parents didn't want you to do that, and you ended up helping take care of your siblings because your mom couldn't do everything, and you ended up helping out all these programs in your high school just so that other people could experience like a prom and a senior photo book. And it seems like you have like a natural leadershipness for yourself where you are a natural leader, and now you're a total freelance model where you run your own career, you have your life ahead of you that you're in control, and it seems like it's kind of like naturally fallen into place for you like that.
Yeah, I didn't really look at it like that, but yeah.
I mean, just witnessing like all the stories that you've told about your life, it sounds like you have this drive And even though everything seems like an obstacle, like you make it work. Like you don't just submit yourself to thinking, okay, well, it's not worth making things happen, so I'm just going to sit back and let my life take over me. Like it seems like you're taking the control of your life and making stuff happen.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree with that statement. I don't know. I don't know if you're like this. I feel like you probably are, but like I'm just when you're a person you're filled with so much drive, it's like you just can't. You can't just sit back and wait for things to be handed to you. You have to like just create it and make it happen.
Yeah, and that's very commendable. Like not everybody has that desire to do that because it is it could you one could say that it's easier to just kind of like sit back and relax and like, find a job that pays you like the minimum wage and, just go about life that way. But you've contributed so much to the people that are like close to you, like your schoolmates and your family members and stuff. And I'm sure that people that are watching you as a model that you don't even know about see your photos and they see your career and they look up to you also.
Yeah. No, I agree. Sorry, I'm also really bad at taking like compliments, and that
It's
feels like a
okay. So am
compliment.
I.
So I'm like, yeah, yeah, like yeah. Do what do I do? Do I agree with that? Like obviously, yeah. But no, I appreciate that, and yeah, thank you.
one one last thing that I wanted to mention, not to continue to blow smoke up your ass, because I hate it when people do that to me too, but I'm doing it to you.
Yeah.
I was on your Instagram kind of scrolling down right before we started this, and I saw that you did something with Playboy. Can you tell me what that was about?
Yeah. So I not last year I did a photo shoot with sorry, lazy tongue. Signature Models agency, and they told me that they had connections with certain people that also like submit a lot of pictures into with Playboy. And so it's not that exciting of a story, but basically they just had connections and submitted some things for me and I got in.
Cool. So did you, like, after working with Signature Models, does that mean that you did an additional photo shoot with somebody for Playboy, or did Signature Models, like, submit the photos that they shot of you?
No, I did a different photo shoot with a different photographer and they just submitted the images.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, congrats.
Thank you.
Do you think that, and this is something that I've wondered because over the years that I've been modeling, the times that I have been published in magazines, which are, some of them are just internet magazines and some of them
Right.
are actually like known magazines.
Mhm.
But do you think that being published with Playboy like enhanced your freelance modeling career?
Um, Maybe. I mean, I feel like it definitely could. I don't really play into it. I don't like advertise, hey, I'm a Playboy model and this and that. I know that I could, but
Yeah.
like, I don't know. I just feel a little weird about it. I want them to hire me because they want to hire me, not just because I have this like label. And so I definitely think it could help my career and shoot me up more, whatever. But I just choose not to play into it too much. Like I don't really advertise it, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, I know what you mean. I lived in Southern California for a couple years a while back, and it seemed like around that time, which was 2014 to 2016, a lot of photographers in Southern California seemed to idolize Playboy, and like
I've
some
heard.
people would only want to hire me if I like had a Playboy publication to show them because then they could say that they worked with a Playboy model.
Yeah. And then, I understand that as well. That's like a bragging right, of course. And, who doesn't want to say that, like, oh, I shot a Playboy model or, oh, I shot in Playboy. I feel like, yeah, people want that title. But
Yeah. But as I also look at a lot of your other photos, it seems that you do so many other, like, more creative, interesting concepts. Like, the one recent one, I think you posted 3 photos where you're, like, wearing this shiny silver armor and you're, like, climbing in a tree. That
yeah.
was so cool.
Thank you. Yeah, I really want to get into cosplay just because I feel like it goes into the whole acting, but I also, I'm a very creative person, so I do make jewelry and clothes and I make furniture and all sorts of stuff. And so I really do want to kind of get into that and design my own clothes and maybe do photo shoots, but I also want to get into cosplay. And so that what outfit was like kind of loosely influenced by I don't most people don't know this comic, but and that's kind of why I chose this comic character because I want to become like I want people to know her as me. That way I can if they ever make a movie, I'm like, yeah, that's her.
Yeah.
It's a Witchblade. It's
Cool.
really cool comic and she's just this amazing, character and but her outfit's very risque to say, it's a 90s comic, so of course they're risque. They do tone back in the newer comics, but her outfit is kind of like I don't know how much you know about comics, but Venom from Spider-Man is kind of like that fluid that like liquid that like forms around the body, and it doesn't cover her whole body, but basically it's a gauntlet, just a hand thing that you put on, and then whenever she needs to activate it, it kind of forms around her as a shield, and but she can create anything she wants, like she can make a sword or wings or like whatever your imagination. And but yeah, that photo shoot was really fun and loosely based on that comic character, and it was great too because that photographer, she's so sweet. She was from Seattle, and I guess she's so used to working with models that just stand there and look pretty, as you would put it. But me, I'm like crawling around in the dirt and climbing up trees. She's like, wow, you're gonna climb the tree, really? And like, I'm like, yeah, I want to climb the tree, like. But yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Yeah, no, I love it. I mean, I can see why you would want to emphasize something more niche and more unique and creative over something like Playboy. Not to diss on Playboy, but it is very like run of the mill. Like, you know what you're getting when you think of Playboy. It's not always that creative. You know what I mean?
Right. And I mean,
That's
I got lucky because they did let me be pretty creative. And I think because I'm known for being kind of like that, I do believe that's why a lot of photographers hire me, is because I am known for really unique facial expressions on top of just doing weird poses. Like I like anytime I see something I can climb on, even if it's not meant to be climbed on, I'm going to climb on it. And then I'm going to use something that's not used normally, because my goal for every photo shoot is I want to hear them say like, oh, wow, I've never seen anyone do that before. Like, that just always makes me feel good because, after a point, especially if you're doing it for so long and doing like 3 or 4 shoots every day, like you kind of feel like it's just the same thing over and over. So I kind of always trying to always learn a new pose or learn something different. I'll put a chair upside down on top of me or whatever, like just anything that could be different. I'm gonna do it, and it may turn out good or it might be terrible, but often not, it ends up being really cool.
I love that. Yeah, I get that vibe too.
Yeah.
And you're right. Like it is boring doing the same 10 poses. So yeah, do it. Climb the tree. I love all of it. Cool. Well, Jamie, it's been a really good podcast. I feel like we could just talk for hours. I usually do these for around an hour. Is there anything else that you wanted to bring up before we go?
I mean, I feel like we covered a lot of things, like my I'm trying to think of this quote my boyfriend actually made that I just thought was perfect. I believe it goes is that I'm an open book, you just got to read what's inside, and that's kind of how it is with me. Like anybody has questions or want to ask me anything, go for it. Like, I'm pretty open, and thank you for making this and sharing all these other models stories. I think that's great, and you're definitely one of those models that every photographer and models refer to. They're just like, oh, have you met her, and so I'm really glad that I got to meet you and have this opportunity. I really do appreciate it, and keep doing it.
Thank you. Yeah, I love doing these recordings. It makes me feel like I get to know people and kind of, become friends with them more because I am intentionally asking you personal questions about your life and stuff.
Right. Yeah.
But thanks for being so open and talking about your family and the obstacles that you've overcome, because I mean sometimes it can be hard to like talk about that stuff for like a public audience, you know?
Yeah, and luckily for me, like, and maybe this is not the greatest thing, but I have no problem talking about all my experiences because I feel like it's just my way of releasing it and letting it go, and like, because it can be so much, there's, it's just little bits that leave every time you talk about it and makes it easier and easier. And
Yeah.
but I also think it's helpful for other people to know that you're maybe not alone and stuff. Like, that's why when I was younger, I loved movies and music, was because whenever I found a song or a movie that I felt like really spoke to me, or like was my situation or something like that, it's like I felt seen and, not alone. And I think that's why I loved acting so much, was because I wanted to share those unique stories that could reach to somebody else that may have needed to be seen or felt not alone. And so I think that's another reason why I have no problem sharing my life story and getting into, all the gruesome details if they wanted. But, if it helps somebody, then yeah, of course.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I'll definitely share the links to your social media and then anything else that you want me to share in the show notes for the episode. And thanks so much for doing this with me.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Jamie, I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.